Ari Aster's signature works are Hereditary and Midsommar, both of which explore the horror genre in a novel way. These harrowing works of cinema leave behind an unsettling sense of the unknown even after the end credits have rolled. One of the reasons why these movies have been so popular is because they truly cover every touchpoint that a horror film should include. Combined with the performance of the actors, the end result is a hair-spiking experience that can spook out even the most seasoned horror fans. So in this video, we'll be looking at Hereditary, highlighting the role of cult work used as a cinematic device in the movie. We will also be exploring the character of Paimon, the demonic horror at the center of the film. Try to keep the lights on for this one. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means an awful lot. Thank you, and let's begin. The origins of Paimon in Hereditary, myth or malevolence. To understand Hereditary's horror elements, the lore of Paimon is important. He is a spirit who appears in numerous grimoires, sometimes under different names such as Paimon or Poimon. Occultists usually say that he is quite subordinate to Lucifer. He is the ninth spirit in Ars Quixotia and the 22nd in Pseudo-Monarchia Daemonum, as well as Dictionary Infernal. In the Liber Officiorum Spiritum, he is initially mentioned as the sixth spirit, but later as the third king. In many other works, he is generally referred to as a king of the West. However, the Book of Abramelin says that Paimon has absolutely no power over the Lord above and would be completely defeated in any battle. Labal, also known as Babel, who is a devoted follower of Lucifer, and Abalam are two kings who've served Paimon and usually appeared with him. A sacrifice must be made for them for Paimon to actually appear by himself. Sources are somewhat divided on the topic of how many spirits King Paimon rules, as some say that the numbers is 66, including those of the Order of Angels and Powers, while others say that it is only 25. He has in his employment as bishop named Spirion according to Sloan MD 3842. He could have been a dominion or a cherub. He is mostly described as riding a dromedary, an Arabian camel. Numerous men playing loud music or trumpets and cymbals follow him. Some mention that the camel he rides has a crown on his head, while others say that Paimon himself wears the crown. Although not uniform, there are accounts of his face being beautiful. He has a hoarse voice and needs to be commanded to speak. However, the Liber Officiorum Spiritum mentions that King Paimon will speak in his native tongue until he is commanded to speak the language of the summoner. Almost all sources agree that Paimon is extremely knowledgeable as he teaches science and answers questions regarding the earth, water, and winds. His knowledge also extends to all arts as well as secret things such as hidden treasures. He has command over fish as well. However, some of his more malevolent powers are the ability to make spirits appear, create visions, find and dismiss servant spirits, and bring the dead back to life. He can also fly and remain underwater indefinitely, in addition to being able to make all sorts of things, people, and armor appear. In Hereditary, the sigil of Paimon appears numerous times on screen and serves as a primary indication of his overarching presence. Some of these are quite obvious, like the one that's on Ellen's spellbook, but some others are more subtle. For example, one that appears on a certain telephone pole, seemingly coincidental at first, but profoundly consequential as understood later. If looked at through a critical lens, the movie stands out from most of the works that portray demonic possession. It is a recurring subgenre that has some usual tropes, but Hereditary does not always adhere to them. This is why the portrayal of Paimon the demon in the film stands out. One of the most important points to note is how Paimon actively seeks out a male host. Most of the critically acclaimed movies about demonic possession, and even the not-so-great ones, have a tendency to portray demons having a preference for female hosts. Whether this is intentional to highlight a connection between the demonic possession of women and the original sin, or done without any deep thought simply for the sake of a more grim cinematic experience, is difficult to say. The outspoken preference for masculinity in the host is a feature that makes Hereditary different. Another standout feature is how the nature of Paimon's presence in the world of the living is shown. It is not always that we see a character being being included to specifically become the vessel of a demon. The majority of works with demonic possession as the theme usually have demons picking random hosts. In Hereditary, however, male members of the family are born to act as the vessels of Paimon. Lastly, it is striking how the demon in the film did not turn his host into some inhuman creature. Physical and emotional changes happen with possession, sometimes brutal with a tinge of body horror. However, when Peter is possessed, his nature changes, but his appearance does not. Mind you, if executed well, the portrayal of the physical deformation of possessed hosts can be a great cinematic experience. However, what most people would expect, and Hereditary marked a departure from this trend. In no way did this tone down the horror element in the movie. However, if anything, it sheds light on the more creepy aspects of the film.
Wow! Yes! Thank you, Charlie. That was...
The cult's role. The matriarch of the Graham family, Ellen Taperley's funeral is held at the beginning of Hereditary. While she does not appear on screen a lot, it is her character that serves to be the driving force behind the suspense and horror of the movie. Her daughter Annie delivers a eulogy that reveals how controlling Ellen was as a person, as well as the complicated relationship she shared with those around her. Annie also briefly mentions that her brother committed suicide at a young age after accusing their mother of trying to put people in him. Charlie, Ellen's granddaughter, is seen sketching during the service, which adds to the deeply unsettling atmosphere. Despite her death, her presence is felt both physically as well as psychologically by the family. Not long after the burial, her grave is defiled by Steve, Annie's husband, and keeps this a secret. Annie experiences a strange and creepy vision of her mother while she flips through a memory book, and soon enough, everyone starts experiencing very uncanny, supernatural instances. Another death shocks the Graham family, straining their relationship further. Annie uncovers how Ellen was a significant member of a cult devoted to the worship of the demon Paimon and was known as Queen Lay. Annie's friend Joan from grief counseling also happens to be a member of the cult and a close friend of Ellen. They were instrumental in orchestrating the events of the film until its climax, which would lead to Paimon possessing a male host. The summoners would receive wealth and numerous rewards in exchange. Annie also finds Ellen's headless, rotting corpse in the attic of the house, along with runes drawn in blood. In the terrifying finale, the corpse is shown at the treehouse, bowing down before the mannequin of Paimon. Ultimately, even though she is dead for most of the events of the film, Ellen influences everything that happens, and her legacy leads to the final success of the ritual. Ellen serves as the central figure of Hereditary, and she clearly places her devotion to the cult over her responsibility to her own family. Manipulative, secretive, and a devout follower of the occult, Ellen suffered from dissociative identity disorder and dementia. According to Annie, however, this claim is debatable because her obsession with the cult could have appeared as mental instability on the surface. Her lifelong efforts finally culminated in the success of her goal, first with the death of Charlie and Paimon's consequent release from the wrong host, followed by Annie's emotional unraveling, and finally the summoning of Paimon. King Paimon. Paimon is worshipped by a secret cult headed by Ellen in the movie, and he needs a male vessel from her family to possess. Ellen has a son and a daughter and tries her best to make the former a vessel for the King of Hell. However, this causes dangerous psychological damage to the boy, which is misdiagnosed as schizophrenia. Ultimately, he kills himself when he is 16, which estranges Ellen from her daughter Annie. After Annie marries and has a son called Peter, she gets scared about letting her mother into his life and maintains a strict distance. However, when she has her daughter Charlie, Ellen manages to get close to them. Initially, Paimon lives in Charlie's body, which is far from ideal because he prefers a male host. However, Ellen considers this only to be temporary and sets her sights on Peter. While Paimon is in Charlie's body, he is shown to be unaware of who he truly is, which is reflected in the weird mannerisms of the girl, who basically becomes an outcast. Ellen repeatedly tells Charlie that she wishes she was a boy instead, which the child does not understand at first. After Charlie's death, it is not clear where or who exactly Paimon resided in. He momentarily possesses Annie for the first time during a scene, and then again just before her death. After an unearthly light is seen entering Peter's body, it is implied that Paimon has officially taken over. Once Joan places the crown of Paimon's head, she first addresses him as Charlie, but then says that he is Paimon, one of the 8 kings of hell. Based on how we have described Paimon earlier, he does not appear as a traditionally demonic entity. Even in the movie, Paimon himself, while possessing Charlie and Peter, appears to be more dazed and unaware of himself and does not act in a very hostile manner. Paimon is a demon only to those who demonize him. His worship promises to bring wealth and knowledge, which is quite consistent with his lore. It can be argued that the actions of the cult were the primary reason for Paimon's final possession of Peter, and they sought him out intentionally. However, it is also possible that Paimon influenced Ellen and the cult to do everything that they did, so he would materialize in human form. As such, his role in the movie is open to interpretation.
Louis, if you're here.
Cult clues. In Ari Aster's words, Hereditary is a story of a conspiracy from the point of view of those being conspired against. The audience is just as much in the dark as the Graham family is. However, there are some clues that mirror the events of the climax and the ending throughout the movie. While the sigil of Paimon has been discussed earlier already, most of the others are not really recognizable in the first 1 or 2 watches. However, seasoned fans of the film have pointed out these hidden clues that can help piece together everything that happens. One of the most brilliantly used devices to set the tone of the film is the lighting. There is a lot hidden in the darker corners away from the main frame, which adds to the ominous feel of the setting. For example, Annie is seen on the ceiling of the room in one particular frame, which a lot of viewers have initially missed. Later, a fleeting frame shows the partial figure of a nude cult member standing behind a column somewhat close to Peter when he locks the attic. It is possible that this person led Annie inside the attic, which was closed when Peter was downstairs. A particularly quick scene shows a view of the Graham house in the daylight before it switches to nighttime. At that exact moment, many nude cultists are shown around the house. This one is particularly hard to catch because of how quick the transition is. The presence of the cult outside the house is also apparent at the very beginning of the film, which shows Peter smoking next to an open window. He appears at the right-hand corner of the screen, but there appears evidence of someone breathing out air along the left side of the screen. This is definitely someone else. When Annie discovers Paimon's spellbook, she comes across another book with a picture of Paimon. What many might not notice is how this drawing has some severed heads tied to the waist. This could have some connection to how Ellen, Charlie, Steve, and Annie were all decapitated by the end of the movie. The scene goes on as the camera moves downward and some text is shown. You might have wondered if it was of any importance. Well, the text says that when Paimon is invoked, he will possess the most vulnerable host. As Peter was tormented emotionally and physically, it probably was easier for Paimon to possess him. The camera moves down even more, revealing more information about Paimon. This is very important to the context of the film because it states that over the years, Paimon has possessed both male and female hosts, but prefers males to the point where he becomes livid and vengeful if he is offered a female host instead. If you have noticed closely, you might remember certain words being scribbled on the walls of the Graham house. While they do not make much sense in a cursory glance, these words are important phrases in necromancy and conjuration. One of these words is Satany, which appears to be a command for the dead to be brought to the spirit world. Another such word is Zazas, which is really difficult to catch since it is scribbled over dark blue wallpaper. The term could be part of an incantation used to summon a demon called Kuranzon. Finally, Liftwatch Pandemonium appears on the screen. The term pandemonium is associated with Milton's epic novel Paradise Lost, described as a place that Lucifer has created for everyone who has fallen from his grace. Liftwatch seems to have Hebrew origins and has a meaning similar to open or turn on. Another clue comes from a seemingly unrelated scene where Peter is attending a literature class in school. The subject of discussion is Sophocles, the women of Trachis. The story deals with how, due to a vision of an oracle, Heracles was doomed to his unfortunate fate no matter what choices he made differently. A student also remarks how it would be more tragic if the hero had a say in how things unfolded because that would imply that the ending is inevitable and the characters are just pawns bonds in a horrible, hopeless machine. It is not too difficult to draw a connection between this and the movie itself, because Annie was given a choice before she decided to hold the scenes to communicate with Charlie. Of course, she chooses the scenes, and that pretty much seals the fate of her family. But if she had chosen otherwise, would things have been different? Annie's miniatures also give subtle hints about the nature of the movie and its overall conclusion. One model shows how Ellen was trying to breastfeed a baby Charlie. Despite Annie's obvious displeasure, Annie also says to Charlie about how her grandmother would want to feed her. Ellen knew Charlie was actually Paimon, and in an effort to display her devotion, she probably wanted to breastfeed the vessel of her lord. While not exactly a miniature, inside Joan's apartment we see some figurines bowing down to severed animal heads and a bird figure that Charlie had made. At first, it appears to be haphazard with no real relation to the plot, but if you consider the last frame of the film in the treehouse where all the cult members bow to Peter Paimon, the resemblance is striking. A minor clue is seen when the mail slot of the Grant family is filled with a lot of letters. A flyer for scenes is also inserted on top of all of them. Fans believe that this was done by the cult members so that Annie would come across it and attend the scenes. However, when this did not work, Joan was used to influence Annie into doing it. And a very minute detail that a lot of people missed is when Annie's paint bottle spills on the paper, which had Joan's phone number. At first, it appears as if she knocked it by accident. Upon closer viewing, however, it falls completely on its own without any causal effect. And just a few seconds back, a suspicious glimmer is seen in the window behind Annie. All these machinations were purposely meant to be scattered throughout the film, hidden from the unsuspecting eyes of viewers who were watching the movie for the first time. They added a lot of depth to the film, and every subsequent revelation gives a new dimension to how the movie was originally perceived.
Mom, what are you doing?
Real-world inspirations. As mentioned earlier, Paimon is the ninth spirit in Aleister Crowley's The Geotia, the lesser key of Solomon, and he can teach sciences and arts and other secret things. The movie draws heavily from established demonology, which gives authenticity to the lore of Paimon. However, most viewers probably believe that the character of Joan was a product of the director's imagination, but if seen on a deeper level, Joan is similar to Aleister Crowley. He was interested in secret societies like the Order of the Golden Dawn, which had members like W.B. Yeats and Bram Stoker, and he disguised himself in his first attempt to join the Order. Of course, this was seen as a distrustful move. Joan in some ways acts like Crowley and mirrors his manipulations of the Order, pretending to be meek but actually turning out to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, manipulating Annie. Marvelous verdict. Ancient Greek tragedy, mental illness, satanic conspiracy, as well as cult elements. If you look closely, Hereditary has it all. Beyond the obvious ingredients of horror, there is a lot of subtext that adds up in the end and makes the film the masterpiece it is. If you've missed out on some of the clues mentioned here, it might be a good time to watch the movie once more and try to hunt them down. Who knows, you might even come across something that we've missed. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.